Hello guys and welcome to my review of the 6 new cards added as a small sneak peek to Oversky. I will quickly talk through all of the 6 cards here. I will give you some suggestions for what synergies work with them, and I will also talk a bit about balance and the design of them. And probably later this week I will also do a deck building video for decks with the new cards. So the first card we are going to take a look at is Iona's Smile. Draw the top 2 flying creatures in your deck. So the most obvious first thought is that you would run this in a Flyers deck with like mono yellow, has most options here. What I always like to do if I search for some synergies, just type in flying or the keyword you're searching for, and then you basically don't miss out on anything. The best synergy in the yellow flyers deck is definitely Draka Sky Captain. You can play the creature first, and if you play the Iona Smile afterwards, they still get the buffs, so that's really nice. It has, of course, also event synergy, so it can be nice with fairies. There's especially a deck that you can play with green-yellow fairies and with buffs, so you can pull out the fairies in your deck, and it's also nice maybe in a sacrifice deck. So for example, you run this as a one-off, and if it's a bit later in the game, you just play the Iona Smile and all of a sudden you have 2 Soul Eaters and you can overwhelm your opponent. For something like a net deck with the annoying nets and sacrifice creatures, the nets are very key for your deck, so you want to pull them with Iona Smile. And then you also have a chance of drawing Radiance. I would run this in like a maybe yellow sacrifice with Doomgate. So that's also some nice synergy because it's very important to get the nets early to start sacrificing. Maybe sometimes you want to pull Garrodon in some lists, but keep in mind it's 2 Faeria, so it's very expensive compared to Time of Legends. So yeah, I'm not quite sure if it's worth to also use it in something like a yellow events list for Kalim, because you would also need to add in some other flying creatures maybe to make it really worth. Overall, I think this card is in a pretty good spot balance wise. Not too strong, but definitely usefulness. Also buffs the yellow flyers deck, where I think it fits most. And it's also nice to have another tutor card, which just gives more consistency to your decks. And yellow decks, also the flying, of course, was always a list that was kind of low on card draw and creatures, and this solves the problem pretty well. Next up is Illusion of Grandeur. It says charge 2 whenever you summon a creature that costs 1 or less. This gains attack and life equal to that creature's, while in hand or deck. So obviously there are only 3 1-cost creatures in the game, so this needs to play with cost reduction. Again, we search for some keywords here, and probably the best way to do it is type in costs. And now we see everything that has reduced costs. We're missing Baron Farga here, which gives us 0 cost, so that's nice in a bargain deck. But yeah, it's pretty good with Magnus, of course, if he is able to stick on board, but the Illusion is already a risky card. In green, I don't really see any real options. Then, of course, Dark Stalker works. And Aurora's Creation is pretty nice, but for Aurora's Creation you would need to search for, because it's 5 less, so you could only run it with creatures that cost 6 or less. So what I would do here is go to 5 and 6, and then you look at the options. So you could run Heralds in a deck if you want creations. You could run Nobles, Lancers, and so on. Then I think we have most options in Red Bargain. I think this is where the card really shines if you want to get it really big buffed. So Ogre Dance, Bargainer, and then you would probably add some big stuff. Ogre Dance and Bargainer means you can also run 8 drops because it -7 reduction, so it would be a 1-cost Ogre Battler. So everything up to 8 cost, you can buff it really big. And I don't think you would really want it in any yellow, so yeah, yellow is not an option. What you can also do, of course, is go for an approach with the Herald and 3 drops. Not only Herald, but also Tail of Turtle. So you would, because this is all 2 reduction, you would add Herald and Tails, and then you can add some 3 drops, like Prophet of Tides works, Mystic Beast gets the buff, if it gets the reduction. Maybe in green you can put in the Willow or some neutrals like Rangers or Horse Masters. In general, I think balance-wise it's on the weaker side, but because it's so vulnerable to hard removal, keep in mind that Voice of Truth instantly kills it. But it's a really fun card, and I'm happy that we get cards like this in the game, because I would compare it to something like a Soul Eater or Apex Predator, or just any late game finisher that you build your deck around, you set up your early game, and this allows unique deck building, which is really cool. So I'm happy we see this card, even though it's definitely not a competitive one. And also one cool thing, so if you play it in a bargain version and you reduce this to 0 cost with Ogre Dance or a Bargainer, then it doubles the stats of your next creature. So let's say this is a 10-10 and you can play it for 0, it also buffs your next creature to a 20-20. So that's pretty fun. Now we have the Deepwood Stalker. Pretty simple, gift, fight an enemy creature. So keep in mind this works globally. So you don't need to play it adjacent to the enemy creature. And it also takes damage. So you just play it anywhere on the map and it deals its attack damage to the other creature. Of course, a good way to gain more value out of this is to play it with hand buffs. So we search for hand here, and yeah, all cards that buff your creature on hand will give this card more power. So we have Eridon here that buffs a creature on your hand. Oakling, very powerful, so a 5/5 buff means your Stalker is 7/7, no, a 7/8. Then of course Spirit, a bit slower, but also decent value, not as risky. And I think Corchester, so that would be the last creature that you can use for hand buffs. So that's an approach to build a deck around this card, but I can see it definitely fill a role in conventional green decks, where you just use it for the 2 damage. This pretty much fills the role of a Soul Cypher's Wrath or a Soul Drain for the 2 damage, for 2 land requirements. Early on, it's something green was really lacking to have finish off potential, something like a Falcon Dive you had to put in the past. People experimented with Punishment, but it was kind of too expensive. This is a very nice option. My first thought was this card would be really OP when I first heard of it, but in terms of stats and impact, and it's very hard to pull off the synergy with the hand buffs, I feel this card is in a very good spot. It's definitely among the better cards that got released now, but it's nowhere as game breaking if we compare it to a Triton Trainer, so definitely not OP, in a good spot. I really like this card. And I'm excited to see in what decks we will find it. Maybe it finds even room in a sacrifice deck, because there you often didn't want to run Soul Rain, but sometimes you felt you needed. If you target a creature that kills it, you can play it next to a Bone Collector, so this one gets buffed. So it's definitely worse than a Wind Soldier for sacrifice decks, but still very interesting design. And yeah, I'm happy we have this card as well. So now the Krog's Dinner. It says your Krog costs 7 less. When you summon Krog, destroy this gift. If Krog has died or is in your deck, draw him. If Krog got transformed to a frog or with Mirror Phantasm, you won't get him back. So keep that in mind. The 7 cost reduction means you can play this for 3 cost and your Krog for 5 Faeria. So in total you will pay 8 Faeria, and yes, you pay 2 cards, but this is also draw a card, so it's just true cost of 8 Faeria in total. So yeah, Krog of course much more playable for 8 Faeria than for 12. Also this is a guy that will collect for you, so it's also very nice. However, the downside is Krog is still bad. They changed his land count to 4, so that's very good, because you could just play a turn 2 Krog, otherwise a second player for 8 Faeria. Of course that would be for some cards a disaster. But yeah, Krog is very weak to Choking Sands. Maybe some people play Aurora's Trick now. It's a very risky card. So if you don't really build your deck around the Dinner, you have to build your deck, of course, around Krog. That works with 2 ways in my eyes. Either you go for buffs on Krog, so Krog is a combat creature, so you can run Gift of Steels, maybe even a Cannon Carrier to give him range, or Horse Masters to give him mobility. And then of course you can also try and go for an approach where you just put in like a conventional bargain deck with all the big cards, very expensive cards, so you get more value out of your Krog attacks. But it's so hard to get Krog in a spot where you can attack and reduce your cards, so overall I don't think the Dinner will change anything. It makes Krog better for sure, but still not viable, which is also a good thing, I would say. I'm happy if we don't have viable random cards, and Krog is definitely one of them. Yeah, maybe if you want to play super greedy deck, you can even run Meteors. So in best case, Krog attacks and reduces your Meteor. But yeah, that's all kind of fun decks. Nothing really too serious. If you really YOLO, you can add in enchantment as well, so you could make your Krog a 12/12. But yeah, if you play this on ladder and you meet some serious decks, there's a very low chance you will succeed. So now we move on to Emperor's Command. It says choose one, give a creature -2/-1, deal 3 damage to a structure, or gain 4 life. So like you can see, this is a Swiss Army knife. Choose one effect. I'm very happy we have more choose one effects. That's something I've always been asking for. And also having a viable heal card. It almost always finds a useful spot with this. And yeah, heal cards shouldn't be like the only thing they can do is heal, because if you're in a position where you heal, most of the time you lose board. And yeah, you want cards that also can be proactive, so just not cards that sit in your hand until you wait that you're losing and then you heal back up. So definitely good to see a viable heal card. Also kind of nice to see an answer to structures, but I will talk about that later. First we talk about the synergies and uses. So of course it has synergy with Aurora's Trick because it reduces the attack. So with the command you can steal 4 attack creatures if you play it first, reduce the attack to 2. Also works of course with Choking Sands. for 5 attack targets. Like you can choking send a ground shaker with this. It's a very, very hard counter to the death touch, to the protection creatures like Shaden Assassins, simply because the -1 health effect bypasses protection. That also means it one-shots King's Faithfuls as well. So if people play this on ladder, it will definitely have an impact on sacrifice decks. Maybe people stop playing sacrifice, maybe they just don't run assassins, or maybe if they play against a deck where they know the card is in the in the in the enemy's list, they won't even sacrifice with assassin because they're just afraid of the command. I can see this card fit into almost every color. In red, it's probably not that great. In yellow, of course, you have event synergy. It means your creatures will more likely survive. In blue, I like it probably the most. I would say in blue jump list, it will just replace Falcon Dive for sure. In green, it's also very good. Green never had good damage remover. Now they have the Stalker and the command to choose, and they have an answer to structures. In the past, they had to always get creatures close to structures, and yeah, the mobility is limited. So green no longer as oppressed by Shaden Assassins and structures with this card. And yeah, in a library deck, the healing effect can also be nice. So yeah, don't forget that as well. But my problem with this card is the free damage to structures. That makes certain structures barely playable, that are already weak. So let's take an example here. What's a free health structure that's already bad, like a Tiki Totem? I think taking free damage to structures as the threshold is very bad, because it limits, like, also stuff like a Gabriel Cistern makes it much worse. I would much rather see if they make the breakpoint 2 damage to structures, so it would still kill a library with 2 health. However, many other structures would survive. So I would try to make it all oppressive structures that can be a problem for the meta. Just change to 2 health, and the kind of fun structures, or the ones that are on the fair side, have 3 health, so they would survive it. Also the comparison to something like Falcon Dive, it's clearly better. In some spots where you just need the 1 damage, the 1 Faeria actually matters. People underestimate what 1 Faeria cost can mean, but the damage reduction is so good that often saving 2 health on one of your own creatures, because they take 2 damage less by trading, makes it super valuable. So this card, I would say right now, is the strongest one out of the ones released, followed by the Stalker and maybe Iona Smile. Yeah, we will see in the future in which decks this will be a staple of, but it will definitely be in some. And finally, we have the Divine Guardian. It says Divine, that's the new keyword, so cannot be targeted by events or abilities. And then when you would take lethal damage, prevent it and destroy this creature instead. So kind of like a heal effect, just proactive. I would say it has good synergy as well with hand buffs. So if this gets an Oakling buff, of course that's one of the ways to buff it. You can't buff it with something like Elderwood Embrace. Of course Tiki Totem would work on it, but that only makes it a 1/5. So yeah, it works in a hand buff deck probably, simply because they can't use remover. Then another use of it would be if there is a control meta. Control meta means people use more remover and less mobility creatures to trade in, then this would be a very good sturdy collector early on. It's basically a farm boy for one more Faeria, but almost impossible to remove because it has 4 health, so it survives AoE. And also, yeah, you can't target it with creatures. One of the ways to make use of the body is by playing Voice of Hunger next to it. So it would give it 4/4 stats whenever you feel you don't need the body anymore for collecting. The prevent lethal effect is very interesting in a race, but I feel like it's still not worth as a tech card. So yeah, maybe if there's a meta where red control is very good, you want to play this just as early collector. It's definitely one of the weaker cards, but it's still very interesting, very unique. Nice to see a new keyword. I wonder what they will else add with this keyword, so we can definitely expect something in the next expansion. So all in all, very interesting cards, nothing really too broken compared to the last patch where they added Triton Trainer, which clearly had power creep. On the other hand, these cards also won't fix the meta. So yeah, we might see some in shine up in some popular decks, but they aren't really an answer to cards that are currently a problem. The only thing that I'm missing here are cards that have effects on where the board matters, so no real board synergy here. I hope they add this in the future, but still very interesting design, and I just hope the expansion will be in a similar line. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching the video. And if you want to see me do this in the future for all new cards, like this was my first card review, just mention it in the comments. And yeah, bye bye.